Welcome to the last-ish episode of Relationships at Work, the leadership podcast helping you build workplace connection, improve culture, and avoid blind spots. I'm Russell Alker, your host for almost 400 episodes. It's been an amazing couple of years. It feels weird to say 400. That's all it is. I'm a communications and leadership expert, nerd, lover of these topics, these very important ideas, focuses, as it were. I love them. I adore them. I started this podcast because I wanted to get better at them and I wanted to help others get better at them. And I think we've accomplished that. I think we've put out a lot of information, a lot of tactical, mind-shifting information that can really help workplaces get better. So why the hell am I pausing the show? And I want to stress I'm pausing it. I'm not canceling it. Okay, that's a very big distinction. After almost 400 episodes, I have spent a lot of time thinking about what good leadership looks like, what it feels like, what gets in the way of it, and what leaders can do differently. That perspective has come from my own experiences, from hundreds of conversations with experts through this show, from hearing from and listening to you who were trying to lead better yourselves inside organizations that were maybe not always being shown what good leadership looks like. And over time, my own point of view has become much clearer. That's really what is inspiring this pause, to be honest. I still care deeply about emerging leaders. That is who this show is for. But I'm increasingly interested in getting deeper into leadership with a more specific environment in mind. Looking at how context, systems, pressures, and the people being served change what leadership actually requires. I'm not quite ready to share exactly what that looks like yet, though. This is about putting a bow on relationships at work. The future, well, we'll get to that later. I know I want to create something more focused, more specific, and more useful for the people who need it. So this pause isn't about running out of things to say. We're talking leadership and the workplace here. We can never run out of things to say. It's about getting clearer about where I want to say them next. And before I do that, I want to share some of the biggest lessons I've taken away with me from almost 400 conversations on leadership with global experts. So here are my 9 lessons. Because when I think about almost 400 conversations on leadership, I think about the amazing guests and what they've learned to share with us. But the biggest value isn't the number of ideas I've heard. It's not volume. It's what those conversations have helped me sharpen. It's clarity. Some of my thinking was reinforced, some of it was challenged, and some of it changed. Over time, I started to see patterns, the bigger picture, in what good leadership requires, where leaders get it wrong, and what organizations need from them. So these aren't 9 things every guest agreed on, or that I agreed with them on. They're 9 conclusions I keep coming back to, okay? I'm going to run through them before I get into them individually. First off, clarity starts with shared meaning. Second, leadership and management are not the same thing. Also, relationships are organizational infrastructure. Intention has to be bookended by impact. Curiosity protects leaders from their own certainty. Trust is built before you need it and spent when you do. Culture is what people learn is accepted. Leadership is an ecosystem. And last but not least, leadership is stewardship. Okay, those were my 9, and now let's get into them. First off, I mentioned it before, clarity starts with shared meaning. We use words like leadership, transparency, accountability, trust, empowerment, as if they mean the same thing to everybody. They do not. Definitions matter. And when leaders assume shared understanding that isn't actually there, confusion gets mistaken for alignment. We're all on the same page, right? Clarity starts by making sure we are all actually talking about the same thing. We need to define our environment for ourselves and for those we're responsible for. For example, if I say the word transparency, what does that mean in practice? If I say I want accountability, what does that look like? If I say I want people to lead, what am I actually asking them to do? Transparency, accountability, leadership, how I define them might not be the same for my team or my organization. Let's dig into that a little bit further. Transparency is a really good one. As a leader, I could say I'm being transparent because I told my team A, B, and C about some organizational change, right? Everybody wants the information. Great. I told them A, I told them B, I told them C. I was transparent, right? Look, I told them things. Well, my team will actually think I'm holding back or being deceptive because I didn't mention E, F, and G. But as a leader, I felt I didn't have to go that far. Oh, those are details they don't care about. I made assumptions. But our definitions are different. Our definition of transparency isn't the same, and it's hurting the culture and the relationship if we don't get clear on that. Shared language matters because shared language creates shared expectations and shared understanding. Second lesson, leadership and management are different, and organizations suffer when we confuse the two. This is also about clarity and could fall under definitions, but it's enough of an issue that it needs its own lesson. We still confuse leadership and management far too often in organizations. Both are important. I want to be super clear here. Both are very important, but we are damaging our organizations by saying they are the same. This is not a thesaurus exercise. Management is essential. We need people who can organize work, manage resources, deliver results, and keep things moving. But doing those things well doesn't automatically mean someone knows how to lead people. And that's what leadership is. It's about people. And yet we continue to promote strong performers into leadership roles, give them some responsibility for people, and assume they'll figure out the rest. No, that's not how that works. Different skill sets, different priorities. Because then we reward the output without always paying enough attention to how that output was achieved. We need to respect the destination, the output, and the journey, how we got there. If a project is delivered, but the team is burnt out, or it's an entirely different team because everybody left, is that leadership? It is for some organizations in how they define it. Because the finish line was crossed, right? We led successfully. But how much damage was actually done? Leadership requires a different set of muscles than management. And organizations need to get much more intentional about developing and rewarding leadership, not just management. Third lesson. Relationships are organizational infrastructure. I started this show believing relationships mattered at work. I believe that so much more strongly now. Relationships aren't a nice addition to the work. Oh, well, I got to know somebody better. No, they are part of the infrastructure that allows work to happen well. They affect whether people share information, raise concerns, get really honest, challenge bad ideas, collaborate, and trust one another when things get difficult. You can have a great strategy, a strong process, and talented people, but if the relationships around the work are weak, everything else gets harder, or at least not nearly as effective. Relationships are not separate from performance. They help make performance possible. Number 4, intention has to be bookended by impact. Leaders spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time explaining what we mean. We meant to be transparent. We meant to empower the team. We meant to create a safe space. We meant to support people through the change. We create documents to show all this intent. Here's all the things that we mean to do. We do it all the time. And intent matters. It is the roadmap. It is what we want to achieve and get to. It literally tells us what we're trying to do. But leadership can't stop there. We also have to actually ask people what actually was experienced. Did they feel informed? Did they feel empowered? Did they feel safe enough to disagree? Did the change actually feel supported? Communication is a great example of that. Real communication isn't just what is said, it is also what is understood. It is meant to be two ways, okay? But we so often just focus on the first. Well, I told them. Okay, So I'm done, right? I communicated. You didn't. You talked at, not with. There was no follow-up. There was, did they understand what I was trying to relay? Are they going to do the things that I asked them to do? Was there understanding? So we intended to communicate, but we ignore the impact, good or bad. The gap between intention and impact is where a lot of leadership blind spots live. Good leadership means being curious enough to understand that gap and accountable enough to do something about it. Intent should start the conversation. Impact has to finish it, or maybe start another one. How well did we do? Where's the metrics? Where's the research? Where's the follow-up? Because intention without understanding impact is useless effort. Lesson number 5. Curiosity protects leaders from their own certainty. Speaking of curiosity, this is an essential ingredient to great leadership. It's the antidote to assumption. For example, in a lot of organizations, the more senior a leader becomes, the easier it can be to become further removed from the experience of the people affected by their decisions. But at the same time, those people at the top, they often gain more authority to make those very decisions. That combination should make curiosity more important, not less. In all areas, we need to ask more questions. We need to be curious. Seek perspectives that you don't already have, or find out what is happening beyond the reports and the dashboards. Get context, and be willing to question our own assumptions at the same time. Curiosity is not about being indecisive, and I know some leaders think that by asking questions, it delays a decision that they have to make. No, it makes it super clear the decision that you should make because you're getting more information. It is one of the ways leaders protect themselves from becoming too certain about a reality they may no longer fully see or understand. Again, we need to be curious. I know I'm talking about it from the top of an organization, but that really is for anybody. Lesson number 6. Trust is built before you need it and spent when you do. Trust is one of those things leaders often become very interested in once something has gone wrong. During a crisis, during major change, during uncertainty. But that is the worst possible time to start talking about it, or caring about it, or building it. Trust is accumulated in ordinary moments, every day. Did you follow through? Do you communicate when you don't have all the answers? Do people hear from you when things are going well, or only when you need something? Do your actions match what you say matters? Do you as a leader provide a consistent, reliable, and safe environment to interact in every day? Those moments, that environment, create a reservoir of trust. And when leadership becomes challenging and difficult, that trust is what you're drawing from. You'll get the benefit of the doubt. You'll get understanding. You'll get patience. That all comes from an already established trust. And you can't establish trust after you need it. Lesson 7. Culture is what people learn is acceptable. Organizations tell people what their culture is through values, mission statements, and leadership messaging. But teams learn the real culture by watching what happens, not by what's on a poster. What behavior gets tolerated? Who gets rewarded? What happens when someone violates the values but still delivers results? What happens when somebody raises a concern? What gets challenged and what quietly gets allowed to continue? Culture is not simply what an organization says it believes. It is what people learn they can expect. I've heard of leaders who talk about the culture they want, but don't acknowledge or respect the culture they have. There's that curiosity piece. People have already learned what is acceptable and what is not in an organization. So they can't shift to a new, perfect, better culture because they're still in the one that exists, for good or for bad. And leaders are constantly teaching that lesson through what they reinforce, what they challenge, and what they tolerate. Leadership is an ecosystem. This has been a big learning lesson for me. One of the things I think organizations get wrong is treating leadership as if it begins and ends with an individual. It doesn't. It doesn't. It absolutely does not. When we think of bad leaders, for example, a name comes to mind. Okay, who was their boss? Who hired them? Who was responsible for ensuring that they were a good leader? These are good questions to ask. Sometimes we have answers, sometimes we don't, but why are we not looking at the environment, the larger ecosystem? Because I think if we focus on individuals, we're thinking about symptoms. We're not thinking about diseases, the system as a whole. Leadership is shaped by the ecosystem around a person. Like I said, who hired them? What behaviors were rewarded before they were promoted? What kind of onboarding did they receive? Were they ever actually taught how to lead? What support, feedback, accountability exists once they are in the role? And when poor leadership continues, who's responsible for creating the conditions that allowed it to continue? The same is true across the employee journey. Retention does not begin when someone starts thinking about leaving. It starts with recruitment, onboarding, then development, then those relationships, recognition, opportunity, and the experience people have every day, right through to how they exit. We far too often silo leaders without understanding how they got to be the way they are. Are we siloing onboarding and wonder why employees are bothered that the organization didn't fulfill all those promises they made at the beginning? If we want better leadership, we have to stop treating individual leaders and experiences as isolated successes or failures and start looking at the systems that create, support, and sustain them. And lesson number 9. Leadership is stewardship. The more I've thought about leadership, the more I've come back to stewardship. Leadership is temporary. You are given responsibility for people, teams, systems, relationships, and sometimes even entire organizations for a period of time. They are not yours. The question is what you do with that responsibility while you have it. Did you leave the people around you more capable? Are leaders creating other leaders? Did you strengthen the relationships? Did you improve the system? Did you build something that can continue without you? Did you leave the next leader something stronger than when you inherited it? For me, leadership is increasingly about leaving things healthier than you found them. Not just delivering results while you happen to be in the chair. Again, leadership is about the journey, not just the destination. So lessons, 1, 2, 3, right up. Yep, that's 9. And I hope they landed with you. And if you're a longtime listener of the show, you know these aren't surprising, but they are important. So let's talk about the Relationships at Work library. While I'm taking this pause, I'm going to spend some time going back through the Relationships at Work archives, not just to keep the feed active, and not because I've run out of things to say. There are conversations in almost 400 episodes that are timeless, always relevant, and many of them deserve another listen. I'm going to be selecting some of those episodes and bringing them back. Conversations that help shape how I think about leadership, that challenged assumptions, and that still feel really useful today. I actually like the idea of using this pause to look back before moving forward. There's a lot of value in that archive, and I want to make sure some of the best ideas in it don't disappear simply because there is always another episode and it gets buried and pushed down, right? They need life, they need to grow, they need to be seen again. So what happens after that? I have a pretty good sense of where I want to go next, but as I've said, I'm not ready to find that quite yet. I'd rather take the time to get the focus right than push into some new title, format, or promise before I'm ready to share it. What I do know is that I'm not finished exploring leadership. I'm just getting much more specific about where I want to take the conversation next. And last, to wrap this up, the most important thing, yeah, that's right, I'm ending with the most important thing, gratitude. I have so much of it. A huge thank you to every guest who gave their time, their ideas, their stories, and in many cases, their vulnerability. Thank you. You helped make this show far richer than I could have made it on my own. To everyone who listened, shared an episode, sent me a message, challenged something that I said, or told me that a conversation helped you think differently about how you lead, thank you so much as well. A huge thanks goes out to those early fans of the show who helped shape it. Ian Foss, Richard Halliburton, Esther Lee, Jason Colt, Liz Reading. And the love to those early guests who didn't know what they were even getting into by agreeing to be guests on this show, but were supportive of the message I was trying to share. Kate Nasser, Leslie O'Flahaven, Vernon Ross, Stan Phelps, Annette Franz. The community for me has always meant more than download numbers ever could. Relationships at Work started as an idea about helping people build better relationships at work. And almost 400 conversations later, I think it became something bigger for me. It became a way to explore what leadership asks of us, what organizations get wrong, and what better might actually look like and feel like. That's the piece I'm really happy is that we got into the emotion of it. Because I think sometimes we get a little too practical, tactical, and not realize it's about humanity and humaneness. I'm proud of that. And while I'm taking a pause from creating new episodes, I hope you'll stay with me as I revisit some of the conversations that helped shape this show and shape our thinking for me as the host and you as listeners. Thank you so much for being a part of Relationships at Work. That will wrap it up for Relationships at Work, the leadership podcast helping you build workplace connection, improve culture, and avoid blind spots. As always, I'm Russell Lolliker. Please reach out if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts about the podcast, about where the podcast might be going. Love to hear from you. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm certainly active over there. Or you can just flip me an email, hello@russelllolliker.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Until we talk again, take care.